"I compose," Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky once declared, "so that through music I may pour out my moods and feelings." These words are undoubtedly confirmed by the rich musical work of this great Russian composer. As much as any artist, Tchaikovsky wove his personal joys and sorrows, his dreams and his fears into his works. He was a true romanticist. At times, his pieces seem barely able to contain the intensity of this emotion. This vivid expression of feeling reflected the composer's own personality. Highly sensitive and passionate, Tchaikovsky was plagued with doubts about his talent and the worth of his music. In person, he made a striking impression, tall, handsome, with blue eyes and a neatly trimmed beard gone prematurely gray. His manner was elegant, his clothes impeccable. But inside, he was a nervous, unhappy man who longed for love and acceptance. He was haunted all of his adult life by his struggle to fit into society. In many respects, Tchaikovsky was a tragic figure, but he transcended his unhappiness through his music, turning his inner experiences into exceptionally expressive melodies and harmonies. Hello, this is Gerard Schwarz for Musically Speaking. On this recording, we'll explore together Tchaikovsky's life and music, focusing on two of his outstanding compositions, the towering Symphony No. 5 in E minor and the powerful 1812 Overture. Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky was born into a provincial Russian middle-class family in 1840. His father was a mining engineer, and his family had a comfortable, if not lavish, lifestyle. At 5, Tchaikovsky began taking piano lessons and soon displayed an unusual talent. He was a precocious child and could read French and German when he was just 6 years old. When he was 8, Tchaikovsky's family moved to St. Petersburg, the glittering capital of Tsarist Russia. There, the future composer was enrolled in a preparatory school with the intent that he would one day follow a career in law. Later, Tchaikovsky entered the School of Jurisprudence, and upon completing his coursework at the age of 19, he took a job as a legal clerk in the Ministry of Justice. All along, Tchaikovsky had continued to take private lessons in piano, singing, and harmony. Like most middle-class families, his did not look favorably on a son seeking a career as a composer. For instance, the composer Borodin was a chemistry professor, and Rimsky-Korsakov a naval officer. Nonetheless, Tchaikovsky felt a strong draw to music, and in 1861 began auditing classes at the St. Petersburg Conservatory. 2 years later, at 23, Tchaikovsky resigned his post at the ministry and enrolled full-time at the conservatory. Despite his late start and the financial hardships it brought, Tchaikovsky felt deeply fulfilled, devoting himself exclusively to music. He was one of the best students at the conservatory. His one problem was a fear of conducting before an audience. Even in later years, when he was much in demand as a guest conductor, this was psychologically very difficult for him. He became afraid that his head was going to fall off, so while conducting, he would hold his chin with his left hand to keep his head on his shoulders. In the autumn of 1865, shortly before his graduation from the conservatory, Tchaikovsky was offered a post teaching at the newly formed music school in Moscow. For the next 12 years, Tchaikovsky earned his living as a teacher and part-time music critic. He also composed, but without great success. Tchaikovsky needed someone or something else to fire his creativity. He found this in 1868 when he met Mily Balakirev, leader of a group of self-proclaimed Russian nationalist composers consisting of Rimsky-Korsakov, Mussorgsky, Borodin, and Cui. Balakirev was deeply suspicious of formal conservatory training. He urged his colleagues to base their music on either dramatic stories or Russian folk melodies, rather than classical principles of composition. He encouraged Tchaikovsky to write an orchestral piece after Shakespeare's tragedy Romeo and Juliet, and even suggested how such a work might be structured. Within 6 weeks, Tchaikovsky had completed an overture conveying tense drama and soaring passion. The Romeo and Juliet overture proved to be the composer's first undisputed masterpiece. In 1873, Tchaikovsky scored another triumph with his Second Symphony, in which he used Ukrainian folk melodies as themes. But a number of his other pieces from that period failed to please either the public or Tchaikovsky himself, and he even destroyed some of his works, including several operas. Over time, however, the composer came to feel more confident in his talent. In a famous incident, he even stood up to one of the most respected musicians of the period. This was Nikolai Rubinstein, the greatest Russian pianist of the day and the director of the Moscow Conservatory where Tchaikovsky was teaching. In 1874, Tchaikovsky wrote a piano concerto and wanted Rubinstein's opinion of it. He got more than he had bargained for. After hearing the composer play through the work, Rubinstein proceeded to heap abuse on it. Tchaikovsky's concerto was unplayable and worthless, he said. Passages were so clumsy, so fragmented and badly written as to be beyond rescue. The whole work was vulgar and badly written. To his credit, Tchaikovsky would not be intimidated and declared that the piece would remain exactly as he composed it. He then stormed from the room. When his first piano concerto finally had its premiere performance in October 1875, it was enthusiastically received. Today, it stands as one of the most widely loved of all piano concertos. Around the time the concerto had its initial performance, Tchaikovsky began work on some ballet music, which had been commissioned by the Imperial Theater in Moscow. The result was Swan Lake, his first enormously successful ballet score. Possessing an inborn gift for handsome melodies and a keen dramatic sense, Tchaikovsky found that he had a natural flair for writing dance music. He later produced two more extraordinary scores for ballet, The Sleeping Beauty and The Nutcracker. With the success of Swan Lake, Tchaikovsky was growing more confident and was also becoming one of the most important Russian composers of his day. In 1877, when Tchaikovsky was 37 years old, two women greatly changed the course of his life. The first was an extremely wealthy widow named Nadezhda von Meck, who had admired Tchaikovsky's music for some time. Late in 1876, she contacted the composer, offering handsome fees if he would arrange some of his pieces for violin and piano to be played at her home. This initiated one of the strangest friendships in the history of music. By mutual agreement, Tchaikovsky and Madame von Meck never met. Remarkably, their relationship unfolded entirely through correspondence. Madame von Meck came to idolize Tchaikovsky, who in turn adopted her as a confidant, sharing with her many of the innermost secrets of his heart. The hundreds of letters that the composer addressed to "my beloved friend" over the years reveal a wealth of information about his spiritual life, musical values, and creative process. In 1878, Madame von Meck granted Tchaikovsky a generous annual stipend that gave him the financial independence to quit teaching and devote himself entirely to composition. The other woman who entered Tchaikovsky's life at the time had a far less beneficial effect on his psyche and his work. Tchaikovsky had long been worried about perceptions of his bachelor status, and in 1876 he announced to his brothers his intention to marry and achieve some sort of socially acceptable domestic life. Only once, years earlier, when he became infatuated with a glamorous singer named Désirée Arthaud, did a woman actually attract him. Now, however, fate seemed to intervene. In May of 1877, Tchaikovsky received a series of letters from an infatuated young conservatory student, Antonina Milyakova, who professed her love and even threatened suicide if the composer would not see her. Tchaikovsky initially rebuffed her. When the girl would not be put off, he met her and finally agreed to marry her. Tchaikovsky's marriage proved to be a complete disaster. After the wedding, the composer immediately fled from his wife, first claiming the need to visit members of his family, then telling her that health problems required him to visit a spa in the distant Caucasus Mountains. Returning to Moscow for the start of the school term in September, Tchaikovsky was reunited with his wife. Within days, he suffered an almost complete nervous collapse and attempted suicide. He then fled to Switzerland and Italy, spending the winter there while a divorce was arranged. It was during this time that he completed his Fourth Symphony, a composition expressing his belief that a cruel fate had destined him to a life of personal torment. During his